I think one of the challenges with panel discussions a lot of the time is the questions come from the stage and the moderator is supposed to sort of fire questions, and I'm not going to be presumptuous. And by that I mean, if I ask the questions, I might miss out on some questions that you might have. So that roving microphone that we've got, please feel free to ask as many questions. I'll ask that we put our hands up as well, and it'll just keep the conversation going. Can we agree to that? Don't rely on me, because I might not know what to ask. Then it's going to get awkward, and we're sitting here looking at each other in the eyes. Nobody wants that, okay? So I think we'll start with you, Doctor. We talk about youth. Oh, excuse me. I just got called to order. So we'll start, ladies first. And I think we'll all get a chance, maybe, your take on where intra-African trade is right now, what the role for young people in particular is, what role can we play, and what are governments doing to support that process? And it's a very broad question. Jump in as and when. We'll start with you, Vivian.
Okay. Can you repeat the question again?
So the question is, your take on intra-Africa trade, where we are, what some of the challenges we're facing, and what is it that young people should be doing to improve that? Where can we play? What are we not doing? What should we be doing?
First of all, thank you so much for having me here today. It's truly an honor to be part of this important discussion. As we know, youth unemployment is a major crisis on the continent right now, and South Africa is actually leading when you look at the percentages at 56%, and it's important. Inter-Africa trade has a role to play in tackling one of these crises. But also, I think there's been conversations around intra-Africa trade and the importance of having inter-Africa trade, but I don't think governments have been very, what is it called? Like not very involved, but very intentional with their policies and the political goodwill to promote inter-Africa trade. Right now, we still face a lot of barriers when you're trying to cross from one country to another, and having traveled across the continent. And sometimes it takes me 2 weeks to get a visa to another country, or it costs me almost $200 to apply for a visa to an African country. And then for a regular young person who wants to do business, that poses a big obstacle and a big barrier to be able to move from one country to another. And also, when it comes to the tariffs that are imposed on businesses, for a young business, it's really tough for you to be able to overcome that and be able to venture into a new market. And then technology has a role to play too. And when you look at young people from rural areas, they don't have access to technology. So how do you expect them to do research on new markets, access to capital, understand the customers in the different countries that they want to go in? That also plays another big challenge. And then when you look at infrastructure from one country to another, how to be able to move goods freely and in good time is also a big challenge. So I think we have lots of challenges that we need to tackle and we need to address. And it's even harder for bigger businesses. So we look at young Africans who are just exploring the business space, trying to get their ventures off the ground. How do we make sure that we create a conducive environment for them to be able to tackle these challenges? And I think we're having this discussion in the best place ever, Africa Leadership Academy, which is a Pan-African institution that's promoting entrepreneurship and leadership on the ground. And those are the key elements that we need in promoting the inter-Africa trade. Thank you.
Maybe I'll move it to yourself, Darlington. Maybe a quick background as well, because I did summarize a lot of the accolades that are sitting on the stage here. But if you could just give us a quick background of your work and what your take on that question would be.
All right. My name is Darlington Ameza John. I am the CEO and founder of Dexterity International, which comprises Dexterity Radio, Dexterity Store, Dexterity Television, and I'm also the founder of Adara Ventures. Adara Ventures is a Pan-African organization where we facilitate trade for Africans in diaspora. From my intonations, you can tell that I'm a Nigerian, proudly Nigerian, and regardless of what is happening, I'm still very comfortable and very confident for me to share my nationality experience. Having said that, with other ventures, we do a lot of inter-African trade. When you were asking the question, I was just quiet and laughing, and I remember talking to Sir Victor just now. I said, when I got the invitations and the topic that we'll be discussing today as a youth, I laughed because in my mind I'm like, okay, I have to find a way of putting down solutions that I have been able to crack in my 8 years of being in South Africa. Part of the things also that I see as a challenge that we face as Africans in South Africa, or probably Africans in diaspora, is the fact of policy which you talked about. What I would like you to know, the Deputy Minister says a lot of things about policies, about integrations, about finding a way to do intra-African trade. But one of the big things I didn't say in platforms in which I find myself is we need first and foremost to be intentional in what we do. And I'm going to speak on behalf of my own nationality, and not because I want to find a way of doing a damage control to Nigeria, no. It's just because I needed to use a platform for me to change the mindset of people. Yesterday I was at a speaking engagement in Mukale City, and I said to them, I said, if you complain that Africans are in South African here, they are taking your jobs, they are taking whatever you think that they are doing, and I have my own experience several times. I think I remember the one that I will never forget till I die. There's this gentleman, he's 45 years old, I don't want to mention his name. He came into the studio, we were interviewing him about what he's doing and stuff, and right on the mic, he said it to me point blank that if you guys did not come into our country, I would have been doing the radio which you were doing. And I'm like, you're 45, and by the grace of God, I'm 8 years in your country, and how come I'll come into your country and do the job you were supposed to do? By opening a radio station that is Pan-Africa. First and foremost, I asked him, do you have a passport? He said, no, if I want to travel to any country, I can travel to any country. After all, we have an ID book that is very, effective for people to travel. I said, that's a SADC ID book. It's not an African ID book. Now, with that mentality also, if we can start by changing the mentality to say, Africans in South Africans are not here to take your job, but are here to put you on the edge to see the possibilities. The thing I said to him, I think we were talking a few minutes ago, and I said to him that coming into the country and the business in which we run, Cindy knows some of the business and stuff, I have never for once find a day of knocking the door of the government for funding. And when I came into the country, by the grace of God, sometimes I like saying it as a joke and stuff, I came into the country with just, to cut it long story short, I came as if I was coming to charge my phone in South Africa. And when they asked me at the airport, I said, no, because electricity in South Africa is very strong. So I needed to charge my phone, so that at least I can pass quickly, so you don't end up asking me too many questions and stuff. But when I get into the country, the first 2 weeks was very difficult, and I had to sit down and ask myself, how then do I find a way around this? And the question in which, for me, with every one of us sitting here is, one thing we need to ask ourselves is, how do we find a way around what is happening currently? Because if we sit down and constantly complain about policies and constantly complain about intertrade, Africans are constantly complain about what's it called, like you said, the system not favoring us and stuff, it will definitely get more tougher. But we need to be deliberate. On what we do with other ventures, we've been able, especially with Dexterity Radio also, we've been able to facilitate almost more than 116 trades across Africa. And that includes Ghana, Nigeria. I have 3 of my friends, very close South African friends who are female. And I told them point blank, one of them currently now is in Cross River State, Calabar. She went into my country, look at my country tourism, and I said to her, when you get to the airport, there's a lot of business you can do. First and foremost, getting to Nigeria Airport, which is known as Murtala Mohammed International Airport. That place is very hot. Whether you like it or not, for those who've been to Nigeria, you could tell. The first thing you can think is produce a hand fan and give to somebody and just charge the person 50 naira. And before you know what is going on, just the moment of me blowing the hand fan and for me to take my packages, what's called my luggage, out of that place, you've made a lot of money. She went to Nigeria. I was based on our connections and stuff. We were able to send her to Cross River State. Now, currently, she's producing the most influential tourism magazine book in Nigeria to us, to tell us our tourism in Nigeria. So, which means the limitation is not based on the environment you find yourself. You choose to be limited by yourself. So, don't blame it to the government. Having said that, you all know what we are facing in South Africa here, especially with the loudest, I have to say, the Nigerians. But by the grace of God, I used to say a lot of people, I have never seen drugs in my life. And I'm 31, I'm proud to say that. I've never seen drugs. I don't know how people even find a way of falling victim of fraud. Because in my mind, I'm thinking, somebody said, click this thing, you will stand a chance of winning 2,000 rand and co. For crying out loud, you didn't apply for the competition. It's a common sense. So how then will you not click just to win 2,000 rand? Shortcut. That's why it's cutting your life short. That's why you're losing money. A lot of times we don't want to go through the process, and that's why we get our life being burnt. But having said that also, with the African diaspora, which is Adara Ventures, we've been able to find a way of assisting people, whereby when they get in the country, we say we understand the policy because, damn it, I must say, being a Nigerian in South Africa is a tough one. Did I like it? Yes, I love it so much because it gives me an advantage for me to go into places that I know that my fellow Africans will never go to. By the grace of God, come next year, May 25th, we'll talk about that later on, probably if you see me outside. We are gathering 10 ambassadors in South Africa here for us to find a way of putting a model of diaspora business. If the system is favorable to me, I won't think about that. But I use the negativity and what's called the lack of good policies process to gather the worst to become the best. All I'm going to say in terms of inter-African trade is don't be carried away by the policies, don't be carried away by the process. You want to get your visa, it takes you 21 days or whatever, and co. It's okay, it's fine. One thing we like saying in Nigeria is that you talk too much and co. Does that put money in my pocket? If it doesn't put money in my pocket, there's no need. So let's forget the issue about talking and talking. Let's get straight to the business. And let's see what is going to benefit you and me. Having said that, I think I see that you try to. That's my own idea about inter-African trade for now. As time goes on, we'll talk more on how to break the policies. I'm not talking about illegal breaking, but how to break the policies legally and doing business with African countries. How to hack
the policies, in other words, I suppose, in many ways. All right, thanks, Darlington. I think I saw Dr. Davies agreeing with a lot of what you were saying. I'm going to give you a chance before we go to you, Dr. Victor, to comment. Maybe again a quick background and just maybe your take on it as well. What I'm gathering from what Darlington was saying, and I'm not knowing if we're all getting the same thing here, is that there's we could be having a conversation about political will, but there is also an opportunity for us to talk about individual will, the willingness to cross the borders, the willingness to do business with our fellow African men. If you could jump in there.
Yeah, thank you, and good morning. Thanks for the invitation, and good morning, fellow young people, if I can say that.
Want to see the ID first?
Yeah. I'll speak to Home Affairs. I'll join the queue for a while. Darlington's comments are great. Let me just draw something out, if I may. Nigerians, very different to South Africans. South Africans, maybe the Kenyans, somewhere in between. South Africans, and I see the questions earlier, and we still believe that the state is going to deliver. Guys, that's there you go. The Nigerians have got past that, but way beyond that. The pragmatism comes through. The need for personal agility, as you define it, and a do-it-yourself sort of business model. Because if you don't do it, it's going to be a hell of a long wait waiting for government to do it for you. We as South Africa haven't got there yet, I'm afraid. The sense of individualism, the sense of, I'm going to, and someone said to me recently, I figured it was, it's very difficult to entrepreneur your way out of a failed state. I think that's very true. Anyone from Zimbabwe here? I'm surprised. It's the first time ever. One Zimbabwean. Sure. Where's the rest of them today? So Zimbabwe, I had a call last week. Someone said, Martin, is it a good time to invest in Zimbabwe? And I said, well, nothing's changed. And the biggest problem in Zimbabwe, it's lost its most valuable asset of all. It's people. You started off, if I may be slightly critical, talking about the pregnancy of Africa, and everything you mentioned was resources, i.e. stuff in the ground. The business model is not digging a hole. The business model is what is in the potential to be unleashed of individuals, i.e. you guys. What this institution is doing is certainly enabling, facilitating that, undoubtedly. Far less for state, far more so private institutions like this. And this is a very much deeper conversation, I think. And just don't shoot the messenger. The bad news is the highest, and I qualify this by saying, I'm sure in Nigeria, Darlington, the figures are off the charts. I'm sure countries like Uganda, in your part of the world, Chad, Niger, Sierra are off the charts. But officially, and the qualification is where data exists, the country with the highest youth unemployment in the world, right here. Number 2 is Greece, by the way. And Greece is an abject failure. So we are young people are living in a country now with the world's highest unemployment rate. And I've never come across a region. I tend to travel quite a lot, especially into Asia, and there's some phenomenal lessons there around failed states or enabling states, i.e. states which provide either tailwinds to your careers or states that constantly provide significant headwinds to your careers. And I think you know what I mean by that. And for where you are all respectively from, you'll have your own view, whether the state helps your career or whether the state obstructs your career. And I think you have your own answers. You're far more informed in your own context than I am. But suffice to say in this is that, you know, the expectation that the state is going to provide and deliver for you, I'm afraid we need to get over it. We need to be more Nigerian in that context. And in the South African context, I'm deeply concerned because I've never come across countries in this part of the world where the suppression of the state is in such stark contrast to the aspiration of its people. And that's that major disconnect. I don't see it in countries in Asia predominantly. Think China, think Singapore, Japan, Korea, I lived in all these countries. Very different. Europe is a very different dynamic again. But the sense of we maybe need to be more Nigerian. We need to be more American, if you will, in a non-Donald Trump sense. But incredibly individualistic, and where the state is actually a threat to you rather than expecting things from the state. And that's just sort of some opening comments, and intentionally provocative. Very political. Pity Booty's not here. I'd like to contest some issues there. But at least the intention of our conversation, I think, is to get everyone thinking, hopefully, in a different sort of way.
Dr. Victor, your opening comments?
Thank you. Thank you. By the way, your opening remarks, Martin is right if he talks about the obsession with the resources for their own sake. But I would be very wary of moving away from the resources of Africa because we are where we are because of our resources. Nigeria is as messed up as it is because of the oil curse. The DRC since 1960, when it got independence, is where it is because of multinational interests in that country. South Africa, by the way, with the political transition of 1994, is as messed up as it is because the 94 settlement prioritized property interests, which were driven largely by mining corporations. Zimbabwe, as it is now, is where it is. Uganda is where it is. You can mention anything. So add to that the fact that the world is looking for a place to farm and produce food for itself. And the land mass of Africa and the ability to farm and produce everything and anything will make us the second scramble for the very resources that we are talking about. But Martin is right in the sense that if you don't have the enterprise to do something with your resources, they become exactly that, the curse, because somebody else will see them and start controlling what happens to and with your resources. So, but I like the vision you painted to remind Africans who they are and who came before them. And that it's only because we slept on the job that we lost that greatness we had. And I know you mentioned a lot of men, but you could mention people like Wangari Maathai. You could mention people like Fela Kuti's mother, who's not as famous as her son, musician. But these are women, people like my own mother, who without even grade 3 education managed to channel all 9 of us in the right direction while building houses herself and tilling the soil. So it's important to remind people that they are born of the right stock. Because when you remind people that they have it in them, in their genes, you reawaken their sense of pride. But it's true that the state is not going to do anything, which is where I'm going to start. Intra-Africa trade doesn't start with the state saying, let's trade with one another. It starts with you having the courage to cross your own border. And why should you cross the border? Because it's not your border. Africa was never 54 states. It was a collection, an assemblage of kingdoms. Until Europeans gathered in Berlin in 1884. And when you see Europeans staying at a conference for 2 months, you know they are really cutting a big deal. And that's what they did. And they sliced and diced this continent amongst themselves, not to suit African interests, but to address their own greed. Unfortunately, Africans have upheld those borders beyond their sell-by date. That even when there's proof that there's regional integration in places like Africa, East Africa, where Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, Rwanda, Burundi have formed the East African community and have started eliminating the need for a working visa in some countries, and they've started having one currency, although it's not one currency yet, but they are moving towards creating a platform for listing stocks in Kenya so that you can trade and buy and sell any East African company. We insist on asking you, which country are you from? Right. So it's important for us to remember that. And the minute you liberate yourself, I'm talking as an individual, whether you're going on holiday, try going to Rwanda for a holiday. Try to go into Nigeria. By the way, some of the most beautiful beaches that you'll find are in Nigeria. But it's your own fear, and fear often is born of ignorance. If you know something, you don't fear it much. So the intra-Africa trade has to start with us as individuals, just taking enough interest and understanding that the walls that keep us apart are not our own walls, and we keep on respecting them at our own peril. Once we have liberated ourselves, and we know that flying to Uganda, flying to Blantyre is not much more than flying to Cape Town in terms of time. And in terms of the airlines you can use, world-class, Ethiopian Airlines, Kenya Airways, South African Airways has flights to these. Once you have overcome that fear and you land in these countries, by the way, especially if you're South African, most of them won't want a visa from you. Except for the Francophone countries, they still somehow insist, and West African countries. But most of them are willing to give you a visa on arrival. And contrary to popular opinion, you don't have to bribe anybody to get your visa. In fact, I believe you bribe more people to get a visa into South Africa.
Coke is expensive in South Africa.
Yeah,
very expensive coke drink.
Yeah, no, but it's not as expensive as it's in Angola, right? My point here is the individual, and Martin is right, the book called The End of the Nation State, if you can find it, written I think in 1996 or released then by Kenichi Omaya, it summarized exactly why we should not look to the government to create solutions for us, because they are irrelevant. Information controls what we do. Infrastructure directs us. Investment and the returns you can generate direct us, and the individual interests are more paramount. So those 4 I's, as Kenichi Omaya calls them in The End of the Nation State, are as important and more important today. Now the Deputy Minister mentioned something very important, that if you are scared of crossing a border, at least use the information technology to cross it. Create a Facebook group or a WhatsApp group with fellow Africans. Look for them on LinkedIn. It's not going to cost you anything. Start talking about what they have to offer, what they do, and you will be shocked that all the Nigerians, and not even people like him, in South Africa are not even a drop in the ocean of the population of Nigeria. We could eliminate the Nigerians in Hillbrow, Sunnyside, Rosettenville, and the ones who were fighting the police out in Vereeniging. We would still be left with more than 150 million well-meaning, enterprising Nigerians. But they are in Nigeria. They are not here trying to take anybody's job. So if you just created and used the infrastructure, information technology, we would liberate ourselves so much. 2, we could build our own apps that can allow us to trade with one another. So where's the government there? The government doesn't have anything to do with that. It's us looking at what we already have. And by the way, connectivity is getting better. The speed of connectivity is improving. The cost is coming down. And therefore, the only reason we are not talking to one another is that we are stuck in the 54 mentality, 54 states mentality. That is irrelevant. That was never built with our interest in mind. So let's get out of the shell. And the way, just to close my opening, the way you opened, there's a man called Kwame Nkrumah, and his remarks in 1957 when Ghana gained independence was, this independence means nothing if it's not linked to the rest of the African continent. That upset the colonial masters so much that they had to take him out. You understand me? Mm-hmm. Kwame Nkrumah was taken out because he figured out this intra-Africa trade. The next one to figure it out was a man called Patrice Lumumba. And in 1960, when he was taken out after or under the weight of multinational interests that were looking to divide the DRC even further, he wrote a letter to his wife out of prison before he was killed, sliced like you cut a piece of meat in a butchery, and dissolved in acid just so that he would disappear for good. And the only thing that's left of Lumumba is the tooth that some Belgian has as a souvenir. The idea of Lumumba was, the future of Africa looks bright. And my expectation is that my children, whom I may never see again, and he never did, will take my vision. Now, you mentioned it in your opening and said, what if the descendants of these people took their vision but used the technology they have to create one Africa without approval of government, without sponsorship from any government agency, without any hang-ups about whether you're Nigerian, Yoruba, or Igbo, or you are North Soto, or you're Zulu, or this, you're just African, and on one platform, without even leaving your chair, you're able to promote this intra-Africa trade. We get that right. We get that right. We win. We continue to mess around with Facebook nonsense that we're talking about stuff that doesn't take us anywhere. We lose perpetually, and we will be here 50 years from now.
I'm going to... Go ahead. Thank you, Dr. Victor. So as I open sort of the questions to the floor, and I think I want us to get into this dialogue and all be sort of engaging, I'm going to put this one to the panelists. Dr. Victor, you're mentioning the fact that we still have this mentality of 54 states. And perhaps the question I should be asking is, why is this generation still stuck there? Are there any, and I'm opening this up to everybody, all of our panelists here, to share some ideas around why that might be. But you don't have to answer. Let's just see if we've got some questions from the floor. We've got a question right in front of the man with the white shirt. My brother, when you get, please stand for us and just give us your name, where you're from, and then your question, please, and who it's directed to. Can we just make sure the mic is on? Hopefully we're still tweeting, Transform Africa. Let's just remember that hashtag as well, please.
Hi, hello. My name is Rudani. I'm from Newcastle. I'm originally from Benda Tendo. My question is directed at everyone. Maybe it's more of a point than a question, but...
Sorry,
yeah.
Okay, no, let's see if we can solve that. Can we get a second mic? Can you just check if the button is all the way up to the top? Oh, okay, so we should be hearing it.
Yeah, you should.
Yeah, buarra.
I just wanted to point out, I think the first point I wanted to say is that, before I put my question, the first point is it possible to bring forward evidence in South Africa to I understand the motivation of wanting to succeed in the drive, but I don't think we can factor whatever one is within entrepreneurial or non-profit, we're not thinking about it in a collective sense. We cannot be that is why we're probably staying in those ways, and we always want to look out, whether we're in a rural or township environment, we're always go to learn and whenever you're this area and look at what the opportunities are in the country, yes, good government, but what are how we're taking full advantage of the environment in these states? And maybe that's why we struggle much in those towns and those cities, because we're not designed for us. How are we taking full advantage of the country? What exactly to consume? And why is it being supplied by economists of land? How are we taking full advantage of the land mass that is there? Agriculture, for example. Why is this big corporation supplying chicken and they don't even know what indigenous food we eat? How is that possible? And I think that it comes to the point of Nigerians and all sorts of African people in the African continent. Aren't they coming here because they've taken full advantage of where they were? You can never go sell milli meal in a Nigerian state. You can't walk around or have a factory selling milli meal. They'll outsell you. They will they'll sort of, just to finish off, are we taking full advantage of the township? Are we taking full advantage of the rural market? Black youth in South Africa, and we all come from either or.
Okay, that question is noted. I don't know if any one of our panelists wants to take it, but just to reflect on what you're saying, when we were preparing for this particular conference, one of our team members actually came into the session and said, South Africans, I was traveling somewhere, I think it was in Kenya, I stand to be corrected, are considered by the rest of the continent to be soft Africans. And it's a real term. So perhaps the question is, what's made us so soft as South Africans in particular, and what is it that we can learn from our fellow Africans, be it West Africa, East Africa, and North Africa? Maybe, Darlington, you seemed like you wanted to answer that one.
Okay, thank you very much for that question. I think I'm very familiar with the question you were asking, sir. One of the big things I want to say here, and I'm still very of a strong belief system that says, the solution to the greater picture of your life is right in your hand. And now, one of the reason why our life is in a can is because we constantly say we can't. If you remove the T out of the CAN, you can find that everything you want to do, you can do it. And also, big things also you were saying, I sometimes have a big problem when people come and they want to do business, and the first thing you do is that you do the SWOT analysis and stuff. SWOT analysis talks about, I think it's SWOT, I choose to be corrected. Sometimes Nigerians, we don't do English and books, we just go straight into the figure. If I put 10,000 here, how much is it going to come out? And life moves on. That's who we are. So. Now, one of the big things also when it comes to English, I'm trying to put it on the English term as you're saying, is we want to check about the SWOT analysis, the community development and stuff, and your SWOT says, what's it called, strength, weakness, opportunity, and threat. But the big things in which we miss in that SWOT analysis is that we miss the X factor, which is the SWOTs. What is the sustainable plan you have to roll on that very particular business you want to, or probably that business venture you want to go into? You must be deliberate in creating a sustainable plan. Now, you are busy talking about Nigeria in terms of millennial business and stuff. Nigeria has its own weaknesses. We have a lot of bad government, whether you like it or not. Currently now you're hearing about the whistleblowing and stuff, and PDP succeeded in plunging the nation. Now APC is now targeting PDP, and now nobody's actually talking about the future of the generation. It's political games and stuff. But having said that also, if you check the GDP of last year, I think 2 years ago, South Africa overtake Nigeria. But in 9 months, we took back what belongs to us because we are tired of these figures in which you're putting on the table. We just want to do business. That's what matters. Now, back to your question now is, do we have this, what's the plan for us here in South Africa and Co? By the grace of God, I ended up giving myself a name called Moratua, which means I'm part of the soil. And now, the thing here for me with South Africa happens to be my soft land, and I so much love South Africa with the bottom of my heart. One of the biggest things I see that we as South Africans like doing is that we like creating excuses. Let's throw excuses away from our mind. We create excuse for nothing. We create excuse for everything. Yeah, the government is not doing this. The land doesn't belong to us and stuff. There was a particular video I watched, I think it was a story that was told by Thabo Mbeki on one video that went viral on Facebook about this very particular 4 Zimbabweans that went to this farm of a white man and co. Some of you guys, I think some of you guys are nodding your head and stuff. Everybody goes to that very particular farm, and this white man doesn't want to do the farm anymore. He asks these guys, do you want to take the farm? The guys were like, yes. We will take the farm, and after taking the farm, the guys went to the man's cattle farm to pick the manure and whatever and stuff, to use it to process the same farm, and after processing the farm, produce crop from the farm that the man said that this farm is dead. Do you know the most interesting about this thing? Those 4 guys are not South Africans. Those 4 guys are Zimbabweans. Now, they look at that same land that you are saying that they are not giving us the land. The land is not belonging to us. The government is taking our land. The whites are taking our lands and stuff. The whites will constantly take it if you create an excuse. Let's call a spade a spade. If you constantly look for stories to back why you are not doing what you want to do. For instance, you can start by, with the technology issues and stuff, you can start by owning your land from your cell phone. Dexterity, for instance, now we have almost more than 3.7 million globally. Every weekend, there is no way we must facilitate the trade. And yet I own no land. I'm looking forward to owning a land, whether I like it or not. The policies is not giving us the ground if I want to go on the legal route to own a land in South Africa. But that doesn't make me sit down and say, okay, because I have no land to do my business, I'll now fold my hands and be looking for the government to give me land. That doesn't make sense.
Okay, hold on. I'm a South African and I'm an African. So I want to answer that question about township, because that's now the biggest bugbear of my life. When I'm in Soweto, and I don't live far from Soweto, but when I'm in Soweto and I get into Maponya Mall and I look at how many township businesses are there, I weep. And then I go to Jabulani Mall and I look for Soweto businesses. I don't find any. I go to Bara Mall, and I'm sure there will be many other malls that are coming out there. And they are called Maponya Mall, this mall, that mall. Mm-hmm. But the township people aren't owning anything. And I say, well, there were businesses in this township before the malls came. And those were the most enterprising South Africans you can ever come across. So I'm reluctant to define South Africans as not this, as not that. I understand if you say the dominant culture is this, but I still go to Vilakazi Street very regularly and I meet young South Africans without even education who will hustle me out of, uncle, can we wash your car? And they know the language to speak. Help us create jobs. Why don't you support job creation? And you feel this is not a criminal. And this boy is not entitled to anything. And if you say, no, the car is still clean, they will say, but your tires are dirty. Right? The problem is you need to graduate from just washing cars at Vilakazi Street to owning a car wash. Somebody must help you to do that. And that's where the organization is very important. That we have it in us, but we might not be investing enough in organizing and structuring ourselves to win. Because
Victor, if I could just jump in there.
You understand my...
I'm with you, and I think yes. we're getting the point you're making. So going back to the individual again and saying, this is an enterprising person, an individual who's looking to do something and create value and add value, right? That person is equally has access to information, be it through their phone, like you rightfully said. Technology affords us access to certain things. How much of that learning process or that learning curve to getting to a point where I'm moving from perhaps being the guy with just a bucket to having a little corner of my own and eventually rolling out a chain of these car washes is my responsibility, and how much then sits with state? I know an enabling environment is always going to be something that benefits the individual, but how much of the individual, and I think it's very much a South African conversation, and I would like us to lift it to more of a continental conversation.
It's an African conversation. Let me tell you why universities have to come in and help here. Because universities are busy teaching business economics in Soweto at the UJ campus. They are doing the 4 P's of marketing. They are learning Michael Porter this. They are learning this, but they can't help young people at the Orlando Power Station. They can't have the business economics to assist all the entrepreneurs in Soweto. So my question is, and we are talking to young Africans here, when you study your marketing, your communications and what, unless and until you understand that you are really educated if you can address a real problem. So I want to see these MBAs today, the BCom accounts, and going into Soweto and helping those youngsters so that they can convert them, that 5 years from now they might still be washing cars, but they'll be owning a car wash. Unfortunately, they will want to come and sell them AC Nielsen kind of research that will cost them tens of thousands of rand to do a market survey, to do you still need a feasibility study. You might be entrepreneurial and just do it anyway, but somebody might end up figuring you out if you don't do. But we have it. If UJ is really going to be relevant in my book, it must find a way to organize and structure those townships. So if you're in Uganda, I want Owino, the mall, the marketplace, all the marketplaces you find in Africa to not remain places where you go and get a bargain, or you buy that stuff and you put it in Santa and you charge 1,000 rand more than you would if you had bought, because that's now distorting the market. I want to see us using what resources we have to create a better and better structured economy that benefits the very people, because they are there already, please. They are entrepreneurial South Africans. Those that are creating excuses we are not talking about. We're talking about those that, even as we speak now, are at the soccer match where Kaizer Chiefs is going to be playing. I'm telling you, it's sunny now. If it starts raining at 1, those guys are going to have umbrellas to sell. You understand what I mean? That's entrepreneurial. And those are South Africans. I want us to find a way of helping them to be a lot more resourceful, more structured, and elevate their game to being world class.
Before Darlington comments, just to throw it back to the floor again, if there is another question, we'll take it so we get as many questions from the floor. Perhaps what I'm hearing, and I'm hearing you use the word help. And we said we gathered here for collaboration. And perhaps that's also one of the paradigms that needs to happen, that we need to stop thinking, and that's what happens a lot. You'll find that the guy with the MBA looks to the brother running around, or the sister with a packet of chips selling on the street, and looks down upon that person. But if we're to have a collaborative spirit, perhaps there's an opportunity for us to get together, and you use your MBA skill set, and I use my hustle mentality, and we find a way to both prosper. So it isn't necessarily about trading across borders, it is trading across perhaps what we'd call social classes, if that might be the case as well. Is there another question from the floor?
Good day, everyone. My name is Kabelo Ledwawa. I'm just a normal member of the BMF. Okay, basically, I get worried when we talk and inspire each other. That I think we're creating a concrete jungle in South Africa, where in the near future the strongest will survive. And if you're the weakest, you won't. Why I'm saying this is such platforms are good, because they make us see tomorrow so that we can plan properly. But can be better if it is taken across other African countries. So also to liberate them. One of the things that we have spoken was we need to travel Africa. I do travel Africa. I've done all the SADC countries. And whenever I go there, I try to find out and talk with the locals, how they do business, how do they think about South Africa and all that. And one of the things that I've noticed, the perception is that South Africa doesn't want to do business with them, and which is wrong. And I've also asked in Zambia, where we're invited into the national debate, that why are they still posting the SADC pricing? They'll tell you that for Zambian, the pricing is this much. For SADC, the pricing is this much. For, Europeans, the pricing is this much. And I said to them, I don't want to pay the SADC price. They said, why? I said, I'm in Africa. I should be treated as a local. The argument went on, but they let me pay the Zambian price. Last, I think, August, we were in Mozambique. From the border, they tell you, here's Coke, as you were saying. I said, no, I don't have. They said, no, you'll have problem when you get inside Mozambique. And I did have problems. Traffic cops stopped me almost everywhere. They even took me to the police station. The commissioner wanted something so that they can let me cross into Maputo through using a ferry. And I said, I've recorded all those conversations. I've stored them on cloud. They said, they want my phone. I gave them my phone. But later they realized it's on cloud. They can't do anything. Then they said, no, let's talk properly. We spoke and they said, are you going to come back next time? I said, yes. I'm not planning to leave Africa because Mozambique is in Africa. But my worry is if we're going to focus on South Africa, we'll create a concrete jungle because not everyone wants everything to be done properly. I don't know if that is the sentiment or this platform will be taken to other African countries so that we can all move equally. Thank you.
I think, and not knowing if I'm speaking out of turn for the organizers of the conference, the intention is to ultimately move it, but more so it is to invite all of us to be under one roof. As you can imagine, there are a number of seats that are available. Ideally, we'd like to have this place packed, irrespective of where on the continent it's happening, so we really appreciate that comment as well. We've got a...
I just wanted to answer. I felt like that was a question directed to myself as part of the Africa80. So last year we did have a similar gathering in Zimbabwe, and again we received a request from one of the Africa80 co-founders as well to have something like this in Nigeria. And I think maybe I was a bit vague when I was speaking up there. We had quite a few challenges when we were organizing this. Last year it was big and it was great, and we had all these young people come in. And this year the challenge that we had was that sponsors last minute sort of, and that is why quite a lot of them couldn't make it. However, we are planning and we are looking to have this in each one of the countries, because like I said, the members of the Africa80 are from 30 countries, and so each one of them in their countries will be leading discussions such as these and consolidating all of that information. And so that is what we're trying to do for next year. But again, it needs to come down to a project. We have talked. I mean, we have been part of a lot of talks, but we have now conversated. We have consolidated the data. Now, what do we do collectively? What is this project going to look like? And these conversations are what we are trying to, get to assist us in shaping whatever that project will look like. So I don't know if that does answer your question. Okay, thank you.
I know we've got a question at the back there. If you could take that question. Are you still awake? You're still here, right? Just checking. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Nono Homonyati, and I'm an ordinary member of the BMF as well. I think I have a question one question directed for Dr. and Mr. Victor there. In the space of this whole globalization and understanding how Africa will trade with Africans and Europe and etc. like that, do we need to have protective legislature for industries, the infant industries, like the township economies, like the spaza shops, like the Stockville markets, to ensure that, as much as how Uber was done in China, Didi came and actually Uber doesn't exist in China. I don't know whether is it because of protective legislature that is happening there. Do we need to adopt that as South Africans or as Africans to say, you can come in South Africa and do business here, but you can't touch the township economy, you can't touch the Stockville market, you can't touch the spaza shop market? Do we need that?
Dr. Davies, I'll give it to you first.
Martin, you know China better, so maybe you can answer.
Interesting question. Sort of, as you mentioned, infant industry protection. Guys, we mustn't feel, as South Africans, and you allude to township economy, that somehow we're unique. We're not. We're not unique, we're not different, we're not special. The same discussion has taken place for decades now in India, what's called mom and pop businesses, and it was particularly aimed toward protect against sizable multinational retailers, think Walmart amongst others, Carrefour, even ShopRite, which went into India and left India. Extreme protection for micro-enterprise, mom and pop stores across India. In Tanzania's case, you have the so-called Dar stores, which around Dar es Salaam, ShopRite went in, ShopRite left, because the entrenched sort of spending patterns behavior of a local economy was very sort of, it wasn't so much a legislative thing in Tanzania's case, it was more of a market-driven force, which pushed out the big retailers. In India, starting to liberalize, but with conditions. I strongly disagree with what happened in South Africa a few years ago, when we saw Walmart investing into Massmart. And that was, I think, that was just a nonsensical issue. However, the thing is in South Africa is, and I'll bring China. Victor mentioned China, if I may. focus on your Didi. So Didi Kaiser is the competitor, was the competitor, now the successor effectively of Uber in China. Uber's been really obliterated. Why? Because in China's case, the intensity of domestic competition is such that multinationals really, there was a window, but now that window is closing very rapidly because the locals are highly, highly competitive. What I want to see in South Africa, and talk about BEE, or these days BBBEE, it should be an incredibly enabling tailwind to growth and development. And I'll coin a new phrase here for you. Where are the black challenger companies to established corporate South Africa? Where are they? Challenger companies. Rather than having a few guys living in Sandton, having offices on sort of central in Houghton, who are billionaires, where are the true challenger companies? That's what I want to see. And I'm afraid, and picking up on a point earlier, this is a very provocative point. Think China here. So this is China, early 80s, highly centrally planned, communist, ideological, China's Communist Party-led, going nowhere economy. Abject mass poverty across 1 billion people, roughly. Rewind 30 years. Today, those who go to China, same institutions, same government, same party, but probably the most entrepreneurial, competitive economy you're ever going to come across. How did that happen? Cultural shift, leadership shift. I've never met anyone in South Africa, a very provocative point, who doesn't feel they're victimized. Everyone feels they're hard done by here. Not so? Everybody. Even Nigerians, but they just get on with it. Everyone, no matter what shade of pigmentation you are in this country, everyone's a victim. And everyone feels, ooh, the system's against me. That needs to change. Whether it's right or wrong is kind of beside the point. It's sort of how do we start to move beyond that and create this entrepreneurial culture of getting things done. And I want to see ultimately, you mentioned a car wash example, washing wheels, washing cars, how do you start to scale that? How do you start to, you create sort of the biggest car wash, branded tied to Engen or BP across the country. Then you're taking over service stations. Where are these challenger companies? Guys, many people, some more than others, have significant tailwinds right now to their careers in South Africa. Major tailwinds, be it legislation-driven, be it, I guess, the economy's flat. We should be growing, but we're not. We know why. That's difficult. Legislation's enabling, the economy's not. But guys, let's just get on with it, Chinese style. But we need to have this cultural shift from a leadership perspective in saying, yes, we can, rather than let's just continuously argue about it.
To answer Ronobo's question, whether we probably need intervention to create those challenger companies. So instead of legislating to keep somebody out, because today you really cannot keep anyone out. You know why? Because they'll just go online and find that which you say you can't make elsewhere. Remember, when you take on Uber and say Uber can't come in here, you're not taking on Uber, you're taking on the customer. So will the customer allow you to dictate to them what they use? If you don't provide an alternative, they go back to their own cars, most of them. Because they're not going to get into your meter taxi because you're stoning and burning Uber. Many years ago, when the British Empire was building the wool industry, it was easy to ban the exports of raw wool and ban the imports of any processed goods until the wool industry came, and that's why we have Coxmore of England, Pringle of Scotland, and all that. The same with Hyundai and the empires of South Korea. It was easy maybe back then to say we are banning anybody who comes. Now you can't. But you can go into those townships and have focused interventions to make sure you want to lift the small spaza shop from being a spaza shop to a world-class enterprise. And as I say, especially because you won't need to invest millions and millions into the interventions. It's a leadership thing. It's an intervention rather than just legislation. Legislation is going to create problems because it's going to take us where we are now trying to regulate. And people of Mufolo will say, if I can get online and buy something from China, who are you to stop me in the name of protecting township? But interventions must be there. I'm a big fan of intervention to structure, to make competitive that which is struggling to be world class.
Director Darlington, there you go.
All right. To contribute to the question in which you asked, sir, if you say you want to find the legislations that will protect the local market, my question is, what are the local market doing to expand their business internationally? Because whether you like it or not, if you want to protect your own market closely to township, for crying out loud, you're talking about township, which is just a way to probably or whatever and co, or you're trying to protect Ubers and stuff from not doing business. Whether I like it or not, as he says, we'll look for another alternative. And I pray you're trying to protect a Nigerian for such, will find a way out. That's one thing you must be guaranteed. There's a friend of mine who produced, an app. I've just forgotten the app name. I used the app one time. It's also the same thing that has to talk about township protection. We're busy fighting about Uber, all this transportation system and stuff, or whatever like it or not. The question there is, what are the township market doing to produce our own platform for us to use the transportation and also beat the price? It's all about beating the price. Are we capturing the market? Now, we're here now to talk about the issue of African trade and stuff, and within all the youth. One of the big things in which I then tend to advocate for is, I don't like losing the core while we're here. And I'm going to throw a question out here. Possibility that something might come out, you never can tell. It's going to be a game. That's a Nigerian for you. How many of us that are seated here currently now wants to do a business with an African outside of here? Please raise up your hand. All right. I'm going to call 3 people out. The ordinary member, I don't know what he calls an ordinary member, but it's fine. And please raise up your hand, raise up your hand, please. You want to do business outside of South Africa? Because we need to start conquering the African continent. The lady with the duke, stand up. You also stand up. And the lady that side, I think I just need to pick. Yeah, stand up, please. And I need a mic to be addressed, to be given to these guys.
You've got a roving mic somewhere? There you go.
A mic, please. I'm sorry, I have to stand now because I've been sitting for too long. I do the breakfast show 6 to 10 o'clock every day. And I get tired sitting down. All right, sir. Let's do practical here. Because that's exactly where the problem is now. Which business do you want to do outside of South Africa? And we need to know your business model. What do you want to do?
Okay, basically for me, is to solve the whole perception of being charged a lot of money for IT solutions, which I believe that developing an app, a system, should not just be about money, but solving a particular problem. So that's
all right. You're talking about app, which is a very good one. I do online platform and stuff. We could talk now. What do you have as a model in terms of transforming? Because you must have a price, you must have a price range you have in your mind, and also you must, because I like it or not, first and foremost, let's not deceive ourselves, sir. We're into business to make money. I think if we start calling money, then we'll know where we're going to. Because the problem I see, for me, that I discover with my 8 years in South Africa is that we're afraid of calling money. I guess maybe that's the reason why Nigerians are making money. Because you tell us point blank, we tell you, okay, 5,000 rand, we can find a way 50-50. We just have weird stuff. And as long as we take the money from you, life moves on. Okay. We must just make sure that at the end of the day we win. Now, you want to do a business, you want to find a way, in which he also was talking about a platform outside with me, where he wants to start promoting African trade, and people are busy charging 200,000 stuff. Let's say I want to do an app that will connect Africa together, especially the business people. Now, you want to do the platform for me for free. How do you sustain yourself?
Okay, basically, what I'm saying, because I have a technical background, there's what you call open source platforms.
Okay.
Open source platform, they don't charge a cent.
Yeah.
But basically saying that if I develop something that you use much better and it solves your problem, you will donate so that I can hire more people, so we can create more apps at zero cost.
That very particular concept you're saying, is it an African concept?
So it's not, but with
that's what the problem is.
With the cultural shift and the mind shift, we can adopt it. Because currently, we are adopting Microsoft.
Now, do you need money to do that very particular thing, or what do you need?
What I need is just proper, system analysis, business processes, and develop that app. Hence, I said for me now, I'm traveling Africa. I've done the SADC just to learn. Before I can even say, now I'm jumping into it. I'm learning across and finding what are the opportunities that are there. What is this I can do that can solve a problem? Like one of the things, why do, as you're saying, Vivian spoke about visas. Why does it have to be that I apply for a visa at my mission? Why can't I go to the local Home Affairs in whichever country it is, apply, and then it goes sent to whichever country that I'm going and gets approved. By the time I get there, it's already approved. But such system, you get charged billions. But with an open source modules, it's for free, and it solves problem in Africa.
All right. Just for us to be able to type together, we'll talk later. Lady, this place, please. Can you give a mic?
Darlington, if I could just ask that we try and keep it
we're
quite
trying to keep it short.
We are running a bit late now.
It's just that I'm a man who I like seizing opportunities and stuff. I'm looking for a business that we can work together, and so please. Trying to search for it and stuff. By now you'd have searched for it. That's why you're here, for you to look for partnering. That's the thing. You'd have searched for it. Don't come and start searching here. Doesn't make sense. All right, please talk to me.
Okay.
Which business do you do?
We've started a spaza shop business.
Spaza shop business. Okay, where is it located?
It is in Tembisa.
Tembisa. What do you sell?
So we've taken existing spaza shops and we negotiate with them, with bigger retailers to get them discounts. We buy stock for them at a lesser rate.
So currently, what's your challenges? What's your challenges in the market?
Our challenge is that there are big retailers in the townships. So people will rather go to a Pick and Pay than go to a spaza shop.
What do you need?
What do we need?
Yeah. That's a question. Think about that.
Should have answered that, by the way.
What do you need? We need solution.
Can we get a microphone?
Because if you didn't have a figure here, if you have a figure now, I promise you'll be so shocked that some people sitting here would have joined you in doing business. And I, number one, would have collaborated with you in terms of what you need. Think about it also. All right.
Okay, hi, my name is Naito.
I don't know. I think it's because I have a grace of women empowerment and stuff. At least she has been on my show. One of the show. It's called Women in Africa. That show is really breaking boundaries and stuff. Almost more than 480,000 listeners.
Okay, I'm currently working with two ladies from the VAL. We're actually working with a system that takes waste and converts it into energy. So, yeah. So one of the ladies is actually a process controller, so she has more knowledge into that. So we're looking to start it here in South Africa and then branch it out all throughout Africa, because now it's solving the problem of waste, whereby you don't need to throw away waste in landfill or...
when you say energy, is it energy, electricity, energy what?
Yes, it's electricity as well as methane.
All right, what do you need?
Funds. We need funds because when you actually look into it, you need about $1 billion.
Okay,
to actually start. But obviously, when you're starting off small, $500,000 is all that we need, because we need digesters, we need converters, and we need transmitters.
Within that very particular location in which you find yourself that you're trying to do this business, how many people know about the business you're doing?
How many people know about the business?
Yeah, that you're doing it. Did you say Tembisa?
No, in the VAL.
In the VAL, okay, good,
yeah.
VAL.
Yeah.
How many people around your community know about that business?
We haven't launched it on a...
No, I understand the launching part. I'm talking about the immediate impact there. How many knows?
No, not a lot of people know.
That's a problem. How many of them knows about your business? Because if you want to do such business and now you're asking me for R500,000 and co, my question I want to ask you, what's my return on investment first? And how many people have you approached in terms of, one of the biggest things, which I like that very particular concept you're doing, and even you give me a good figure, how many people know about it, I promise you, give me 90 days, I'll raise the money for you. But now the thing is that you don't know. Now, how many, do you have, even though you don't have the trucks and stuff to pack those refuse dumps and stuff, for you to convert them to energy and coal? But the thing there is, within the small people, your next door neighbor or 5 of people around you, they don't know this is what you're doing. You talk. I guess maybe that's why Nigerians are loud.
Not necessarily, because we have a project that we're running on. So right now we're dealing with the experimental part, and then we'll be able to launch it out, because we have clients.
When are you targeting to launch out?
Next year.
When? Date?
Next year in October.
I'll hold you accountable to that. Okay. You ask in the priority, you give me my contact detail, we'll talk about that.
I think we're going to have to do that. We're going to have to sort of cut that, and I'm sorry to do that, Darlington. I'm just trying to manage time.
Yeah, the reason why I'm trying to say this, please, is because Doing inter-African trade here for us as youth is the fact that we have to be very deliberate with what we want to do. You can't come and approach me and tell me you're doing experiments and stuff. The question is, what do you want to do? How much do you need? How do we get there? What's my cost and investment? And life moves on. If you want to go into Nigeria, Kenya, Zimbabwe, Uganda, Tanzania, I can assist you with that. But if you come and tell me you're doing experiments at this very particular point in time, how long are we going to be experimenting? And yet, what I like it or no, let's call it a spade, the Guptas are taking over. Thank God it came to Nigeria, we chased them away. Please, let's have our figures straight. We're youth. Let's be energetic. Let's stop this idea of we just want to experiment, we want to find out, we're still trying to research and stuff. Research from the one you know. I think one story I just shared, 2 minutes please, I know my time is going. When we started Dexterity, I promise you, we tried everything for us to do experiments, and I called my team, I said, first and foremost, my blood is green, white, green. I have no time to do experiment. And everybody that was working on my team said, they were all South Africans. Like, no, Darlington, we need to do the feasibility study, we need to check the atmosphere, we need to... Dude, it does not make sense. We want to start a radio station. Let's just start a radio station, buy the equipment, put it, let's say hello, check at somebody, the person can say hi, and somebody say, life moves on. And by the time we do that, sir, we went to one of the guys in terms of licensing and stuff, and the guy said to us point blank, we're not going to give you a license because you're a diasporan. Cut the long story short, because you're in Nigeria. And I said to him, it's good, it's fine. Do we need license to download WhatsApp? He said no. Do you need license to download Instagram? He said no. Do you need license to download Twitter? He said no. Give me 1 week. 1 week I called my team and I said, guy, I need you to do me this very particular app, make sure that it's available on all the platforms and stuff. Whatever you want to chat, let me know. Immediately we are starting the broadcast on Thursday, I remember, because I needed to prove to the man that it's not about research and stuff. I sent him the link, download the app, and that very particular day I was like, hello, how are you doing, son? How you doing? My name is Darlington Steve, live on Dexterity Radio, and he called me back for us to negotiate business. Imagine if I were waiting for us to go through process. Be intentional. Push. Stop waiting for research. We are youth. We are vibrant. I'm very sorry, sir. Here we want to go through process. We all here, we don't have time. You came late. What's your story? Jump into the business and let's run. That's all that matters for me. All the questions I ask here, do you have your figure? Come and let's talk. If it's money, we can find a way of producing money. If you want to travel, who wants to travel to Nigeria? We can crack it out, but I promise you, less than 1 week, you'll be in Nigeria.
There you go.
What's the problem? Thank you very much.
Round of applause for Darlington. I would ask him for final remarks, but I feel like he's already done his final remarks. So I'll move on to you, Dr. Victor. Let's keep it short as well, Vivian. Then you'll follow, and then Dr. Davies, you'll give us your final remarks quickly.
That's the design important. But I agree that the individual has to take the center stage. Individuals, when they say there are 7 billion people in the world, they mean 7 billion individuals. So it's 1 multiplied by 7. Only reason they can pay, which was a kind of a starter shop, and Raymond Mahoney bought it, is what it is, because Raymond took that starter shop and scaled it up. Scaled it up, you need to be organized, you need to be plugged in. And again, remember, especially for Africans, the system is still stacked against you. You want to win, you are taking on a corporatocracy. When you love that word, corporatocracy. You are taking on a corporatocracy. No one will let you take away what they have. So you've got to be very organized, you've got to be smart about what you do, and not make noise until you know what you do. Because you are challenging big threats. And some people thrive when you are not organized. They thrive. They show you are. But people like Darlington here are the right energy, the right virtuosity that we need in Africa. That we are doing things anyway. Because you can plan for 20 years, you can do the same thing for 20 days, chances are after 20 months, you'll have learned enough and become more strategic. And if you have planned for that. But Africa is yours. If
you don't take advantage of it, somebody else will. And already the Chinese are taking advantage. Look at the coup in Zimbabwe. No, they did, because General Chiwenga went to China. Right now, I'm not speculating about why you're there, but I'm saying there are people who are becoming superpowers from your own continent because we are too scared.
There's a second colonization happening. Vivian, you could have your final remarks, please, quickly.
So I think we've been having a very interesting conversation. But also going back to what has been said, South Africa being a soft nation, you should be like Nigerians. I think at the end of the day, you should be your own person. And it doesn't matter whether you're South African, you're Kenyan, you're Nigerian, as long as you're very intentional with what you want to achieve and you let people know exactly how you want them to come in and help you achieve it. But if you talk also about the bigger picture of the inter-Africa trade, I think there's some of the things that have been missing from these conversations that we should have addressed. And also talking about registration of your businesses into different countries, taxation in these different countries, licensing in these different countries, legislations that my former colleague was talking about. I think that also the realities of doing businesses in different countries that we need to address and not just say that, oh, because you have the grades, you have the intention, just walk into Kenya and your business is going to thrive. I'm going to be honest with you, it's not going to thrive. And you're going to face the challenges. And we also need to talk about those realities about those challenges. It's not about wasting time on the research and wasting time on trying to get to know who to do what. But it is the reality on the ground, and it's the reality that we're going to face. If you want to grow that business, if you're talking about a small, medium business, fine, you can cross borders and whatnot. But if you want to grow, and if you want to get to the level of the Dangotes, and if you want to get to the levels of Sahara Group and all that stuff, the reality is you also need to do your homework, and you have to know the market that you want to go into, the people that you want to work with, the diversity, the culture, the language, the currency, how they trade in those places, the technology available. So it's good, be intentional, run for it, but also take your time to understand the markets that you want to go into.
Thank you very much, Vivian. Doctor?
Very briefly, so on the theme of entrepreneurship, I'm a corporate guy now. I never used to be. I started a very small, I went to 2 job interviews my entire life, 2. Both were really bad experiences. After the second one, about an hour later, I thought, I can't do this again. I'm going to start my own business. I was in my early 20s, mid-20s. So I did. Built the business up eventually, and I sold the business to Deloitte. And that's where I am now, a number of years ago. But guys, it's an incredible journey. You learn so much. Considering the high unemployment we have in this country, entrepreneurship may be your only avenue, as opposed to formal sort of 9-to-5 or thereabouts structured employment. Agility is what you require in your careers as you go forward. Agility. And the word, Victor coined the phrase corporatocracy. Guys, don't think that the corporates suppress you. I can tell you now from the other side of the fence, you can't believe how inefficient and slow big companies are. Now, if you can't, through that agility, create entrepreneurial sort of, ventures with or against or between this corporate presence you have in South Africa, then I'm afraid you might as well give up before you start. There's incredible opportunity, but it takes a mindset shift to see it. Darlington, how many Nigerians in South Africa? Give me a rough figure.
Legal-wise, let's go.
You top of a list. Give me a number. How many?
About 420,000.
420,000.
Yeah.
Okay, 420,000 people left Nigeria, coming here, not looking for jobs, seeking opportunity. They see the opportunity. You allude to, I don't know how many hundred thousands of Chinese. They see the opportunity. The Mozambicans, the Zimbos, they see the opportunity. But the locals are like, what are we going to do now? Where's the opportunity? Guys, it's a mindset shift.
Thanks, Dr. David. I think the locals are saying government, government, government. In fact, that's exactly what's happening. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give a round of applause to our panelists. I know we want to continue with this conversation, but during lunch, please, let's engage. We do have to get to the other sessions. That's why I'm kind of trying to